Maybe we reduce the load of the customer care teams by 30%, and that extra 30% of their time can be calling 5 customers a day just to see how they are. Depending on the business you're in, if you're in the B2B business or manufacturing business, calling your customer you've had for 30 years just to see how they are once a quarter or once a month will go a long way. The relationship building, the human connection, talking to the person on the other side of the email, right? Like how many of our customers for the customer care team do they know that they've emailed probably 500 times and they've never spoke to them? So I think, and then you drive customer loyalty through that. So you can measure customer loyalty, which in turn would drive more revenue, right? It's actually exciting to think about.
Hello, and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Ben Foden, and our guest today is Justin McDonnell. From turning wrenches in the U.S. Navy to leading strategy as Vice President of Customer Experience at Illuminator Technology Group, Justin has spent 20 years mastering every inch of the service world. He's a proven expert in turning chaos into process and unifying fragmented departments into high-performing, data-driven teams that deliver operational excellence and boost margins. Justin, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
I know you have a background in the Navy. We can see some excellent examples or evidence of this on the wall behind you. But from the time that you started your career until now, like what's one of the first lessons you learned, the first things that stood out to you about customer experience?
There's one story in particular that I constantly remind myself about and use as a teaching point or a learning lesson for my teams. And that was when I was a technician working in the oil and gas field. I was on an oil rig, an ultra deep water rig in the middle of the ocean. And I was very frustrated as a technician because what I was working on was an oversight by another technician or another engineer. And I remember I was on our hotline with one of our senior engineers of the company, and I was venting my frustration about the current situation I was in. And what he told me was, nothing in the past matters. The only thing that matters is the solution for the customer. So I think there's great truth into that, especially on the customer-facing teams, the customer experience teams. I think there's a time and a place to look back to see why or what happened, the root cause analysis of a situation. But in the moment, the only thing that matters is the customer and how do you resolve the customer's issues.
Absolutely. And then that's the last thing. The last thing might be the only thing the customer remembers, that last interaction, right?
Correct. So shaping your mentality, your attitude of you, yourself, or your teams is so important. Not letting the frustration you may feel internally about your situation, especially on the technical roles or the field service teams that can often feel this way about, I describe this to a lot, like the field service teams or the technical support teams. They only get calls when something's not going right. Nobody's calling your technical support team to say, just wanted to make sure you're having a great day. You're calling them to say something is broken, help me fix it. So the tension and the stress is already high, and just focusing on how to resolve the customer's problems is the most important thing to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to separate emotionally sometimes the inertia, all the things in the background, all those things that we deal with, the stresses from last week, the stress from yesterday, whatever's going on. But to be able to kind of put that in a compartment for now, focus on what the customer is actually talking about, and like get forward to the solution, right? What do you think about like this balance of managing the humans on your team and sort of the rational, logical, the tension of emotion and logic, if you will?
A great question. I think everybody is different. I think the best way to go out for that is very clear objectives for the team to focus on. I think that's the basis for everything. If your team, whether it's the customer care team or technical support team or the field service team or any customer facing role, knows exactly what they're supposed to deliver to the customer and has clear expectations and goals, I think that they can align to that much better. And then also I think it's visibility into everything that your team is doing. So the data behind The teams, whether it's the basic ones everybody calls out, response time, resolution time, CSAT score, all of that type of stuff is very important. But very clear goals and objectives for the teams to reach toward and achieve is the base of all of that.
Absolutely. I'm not the first person to say this idea, and I'm not sure where it originated, but this idea of like start with the objective in mind and then work backwards with your plan, right? Work backwards from the goal. When you think about, laying out a strategy, when you think about, how you're going to approach 2026, for example, like what are some of the things that you look at that you think might be overlooked by other people or might be underappreciated?
If we're talking 2025 and 2026, I would say overlooking or over we're overanalyzing the importance of AI, especially in 2026. Although I think it's very important, and I think it's going to come, especially to the customer-facing teams. I don't think it's as big as a threat as everybody leads it on to believe that it's going to be. I don't think there's going to be a massive layoff of the customer-facing roles or the engineering roles immediately. I think it'll take time to get there. If it gets there, I'm not so convinced by from what I've seen. I think AI still has a much longer way to go. And if you don't believe that, just challenge AI what it tells you, and you'll see that like it doesn't even believe itself. But
Hmm.
then to go back to your first thing, I think the most important question is why. Why are we doing this? And I think when you talk strategy and how to frame it, start with why, and then align your goals to that, right? And then from the customer facing side is what are your customer needs, and align everything you're doing to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it all starts and ends with the customer. And I feel like I have to repeat this because it's so easy to get lost in our own worlds and our own businesses and our own, you know, tasks we're managing on a given day and forget like if we're not serving customers, if we're not thinking about customers throughout, what are we really doing here, right? Um, I wanted to get your thoughts on this idea, and it's there's certainly this big transition happening in the workforce with AI, certain roles and jobs being automated, certain roles and jobs being created, to manage the AI and sort of, put the right inputs in and tune it and everything. And there's definitely a messy transition happening right now for a lot of teams. But I think that there's this idea, and the best way I could explain it is a story actually. So there's an interview with a professional cyclist, right? Rides a bicycle for his job. And they interviewed him, and the interviewer asked him a question like, you know, you started when you were young and you got stronger and you got faster and you reached the professional level, Tour de France and all this sort of thing. Like, did it get easier for you? Did it get easier to ride your bike? And the cyclist said, no, I just go faster, right? And I think that that's the analogy with AI. I don't think that a lot of jobs are just going to vanish into thin air. You're just going to do more, right? What do you think about this idea?
I think correct for AI. I don't think what I would think people are probably looking at now is like, if I implement AI, can I scale with the same size of team? So can my fixed cost remain the same as we continue to scale? And obviously, the fixed cost of AI. That's the other thing people don't talk about. It. There's a major investment that has to be made into AI. So the smaller to mid-sized companies, I don't know if they have the capital just to go invest heavily into AI. And then the $1 million question is, which AI are you going to invest in? So there's risk in the smaller startups. They're going to offer you much cheaper routes, but are they going to be here in 5 years? I mean, the answer is probably no, right? 80% of them will fail at least. So, there's a lot of questions that, we're sprinting for the last 2 years on AI. And then on top of that, if you listen to who's promoting AI, it's the owners of AI.
Sure.
So of course they will be telling everybody it's the future and you can't live without it and it's coming because they're
Right.
invested into AI. So like
Right.
they're naturally going to tell you these types of things. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I work for an AI company, right? So I'm obviously biased in this conversation, and I'm happy to say that. I'm not denying it. But I do think that, within if there's a lot of smoke, then there's definitely some fire, right? And this is the case, I think, with AI. I mean, there's this massive, you could say the smoke cloud or this massive wave that's happening, right? But there is real impact too, and there's real, to use a financial term, there's alpha to be gained, right? There is an opportunity here, and yes, absolutely, to your point, like a lot of these players that are here today are not going to be here tomorrow. A lot of these routes forward are going to be dead ends, and it's this sort of messy stage where a lot of things are getting explored. Um, when you think about, this evolution, like what are some of the things that you think are really important to not overlook, or that are maybe under indexed on as far as actually getting results with AI?
It's eliminating the mundane routine tasks that the customer experience teams do. So the order entry side of the job, the low complexity interactions with customer, and that's already here, right? It's been here for 3 years, I guess, and even a little bit longer. But what AI has done, even in the last 12 months, it's advancing very, very quickly. For the customer experience side, it's important because if we can eliminate the mundane, repetitive tasks, that means the customer care teams now can actually transition into a team that's communicating with the customer more personally and more often, right? They can actually start talking to the customers while the AI handles the mundane work. So if you could alleviate 25% of the order entry by the customer care team, maybe they can start reaching out and having those customers that slip through the crack when they're entering orders all day or they're responding to emails all day. So that's the exciting side of it. But you're right, it's coming for sure. I'm just not so I'm not sold that 60% of the jobs in the U.S. are going to be gone within 5 years. I'm not sold on that.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that's an optimistic, maybe some people will think that's an optimistic take, or an optimistic perspective, but I think, you know, it's not, a technological cycle is not a new thing. There's been technological cycles throughout history, right? In the first caveman that picked up an axe and chipped it into a stone and chipped it into an axe, it's sort of like, he worked with his tools and he got stuff done that he couldn't do before, and life went on. But I think obviously AI is this new beast in some ways, and also it's a cycle that we've seen before, the farmer moving from a horse to a tractor and so on. And every time there's these cycles, there's creation and destruction, right? With the evolution that's going on, inevitably, what do you think about the changing roles that are required, and what are the opportunities there? Because if AI is handling all the easy tickets, like what do the junior folks do, for
That's
example?
where the concern is, right? Is the
Yeah.
entry level positions. Right?
Hmm.
I think you can already see that happening in the job market from what I read, right, on socials and LinkedIn, that the entry level positions are much, much harder to find now, which might be true. But I guess it really depends on the industry you're looking at, also where you're willing to live and where you're willing to work. The job market's a little bit interesting right now. I don't know how much of that is because of AI. I know they want you to believe it's from AI, again, because the people touting this need to sell AI. So
Right.
they have to boost it up. I also think a lot about, the companies that are probably investing a lot in it, and this is for the US market, have probably offshored these roles long ago anyway, right? They've offshored these long ago. So like when you talk about them removing customer care teams, those are already in offshored.
Yeah, I think, the US in the world is mature in this sense, it is ahead of the curve as far as optimization, generally speaking. I think there's still a lot of organizations that probably have, tier one and junior staff that they probably don't technically need them to answer tickets or whatever it is. But I do think that there's a new opportunity and there's new requirements in the new landscape, right? And that includes junior positions as well, in my personal opinion. Um, and I was just talking to a guest recently about this, but there's this idea of knowledge operations and AI operations, right? Who is handholding the AI? Who is feeding it, improvements? Who is giving the knowledge base the updates? And there's a lot of those types of roles which I would hope to see, which I would expect to see opening up. All the people that have been answering tickets can maybe transition in that direction. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. Low complexity. Where's my tracking number? I'd like to change the shirt from blue to green. I'd like to cancel my order. I think those are very easy tasks for AI at this point. Will it be adopted? It's very expensive to do that. I mean, it's depending on what system you're using, it's seven figures to do that type of work if you have nothing. So then the upfront cost is, scares a lot of people. But again, I think it frees up the junior people coming on board, maybe to monitor the AI, put the guardrails on AI, right, as we like to see it. The escalations go down as L1 stuff becomes taken over by AI. Your human agents are watching closely in the background and jumping in very quickly to assist. It'd be interesting. I'm sure there's already studies out there. I haven't read them yet on like. I still personally don't like talking to AI, right? So the adoption rate from the end user is going to be what's most important, right? Like, are we
Right.
going to change to all this AI, and then the customer pushes back and say, like, I don't want to talk to an AI, I want to talk to a human, right? So it'll be interesting to see that transition, because, like, be honest, when you call and it's AI, are you pushing one rapidly to talk to somebody, or are you willing to like let the AI fumble around a little bit?
Right. Well, and I think that for depends on the business. It always depends, but in my experience, there are times when I really want to talk to a human and when I really don't, and just not even when it comes to like online or, using an app or something. Like, I don't want a doorman at the drugstore. Like I just want to walk into the drugstore and get what I need and get out, right? What do you think about this balance that like, do you feel this in your own life?
Yeah, I supposed to get dog treats last night from Amazon, and I got two bottles of shampoo. I mean, it's okay, no problem. But it took a 15-minute conversation with AI before a human got on and answered my question in 1 second. Like it couldn't
Hmm.
figure it out. And all I want to know is like, what do I do with the shampoo?
Right.
It just couldn't answer the question for me.
Right.
It didn't
Right.
understand that I was trying to say like, hey, I have this product I wasn't supposed to. Would you like? Do I need a printing label? Do I need to return it? Do I get to keep it? Whatever.
Hmm.
And finally, like after 15 minutes, maybe that's exaggerating, 5 minutes, I got in contact with somebody from the customer support team, and they said, no, you can donate it, keep it, or whatever. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, thank you. I just want to clarify that. So, we say it's time saving, but there is like, again, low complexity. What's my tracking numbers? Very easy. The AI probably would have got me that faster than the human. But when I have very specific questions about an order or lines, it gets more complicated. It'll get there, let's be honest. It's not quite there yet. And then, specifically what I've done, always done is manufacturing, um, high complexity order entry and looking at bombs and building materials and parts and lead times and purchasing and suppliers. We're a long way from that. We're a long way from that. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things there I want to react to. So, like, one is this idea of actually being understood, right? Or not being understood, as the case may be for you last night. But but this idea of like humans are very good at understanding other humans, right? As soon as you got in contact with a human, it was like a couple seconds, and they got exactly what was going on, and they were able to help you. Um, and that could be in something really basic, like essentially making a return or not needing to make a return. But it could also be like a really nuanced, complex, specific technical question about a product, and through understanding the language and maybe facial expression or just having the full context that a human can have, you know, they're able to get you really, really quickly to what you need. I don't see that going away, and I don't see AI doing that perfectly, but maybe there's a direction there. Again, sort of thinking about like what is the new roles, what are the new requirements in this era? It's like translating the human understanding into the AI and sort of all the steps involved with that. Like, what do you think about this direction of like it's not replacing humans, it's sort of amplifying their abilities?
Yeah, I think if you look at the recent strategies from the big AI companies, That's their strategy. 2024 is like we're going to replace humans. In 2025 has turned in we're going to enable humans. So I
Hmm.
think they're kind of seeing that too. That we're like, you know, nobody at a business that's making these decisions is really happy about eliminating all these jobs. Like I hope you're not, right? If that's the route your company's going to go. But the sales pitch can be, we're going to have a better customer experience for our customers because we're providing the better tools to our teams that you can generate some excitement about there. And then again, where I see the big pitch is like, we need to continue to grow the business as everybody does, and we can keep the same size of team. I can keep the customer care team at 15 people, and we can increase sales by X. But the team, because of these new tools, can stay here, so your margins improve,
Right.
right? So I think that's kind of what will get it exciting about, like margins improve because you're not growing the teams as you grow the business.
Absolutely. I mean, separating those curves, right, or keeping one flat as the other one rises. I think there's an opportunity. You talked about margin. There's definitely an opportunity that I see going beyond cost savings. Of course, the traditional view is that this is the end of the road for the customer, and we just try to avoid, spending as much as we can on this, and we serve them efficiently. And then, what about like the revenue impact of that, right? If you retain a customer, if you help upsell a customer, if you know, keep the relationship, keep the customer relationship good, they stick around longer, you have higher lifetime value. Like, what do you think about measuring not only the cost saved, but revenue impact on, impact on margin?
Yeah, it goes up, right? If we're doing the small things, um, keeping the team size the same as we grow, revenue margins will increase. Another exciting thing too is the mundane task. Imagine if your customer surveys turned in from a random email to somebody calling you and actually seeing how you work.
Right,
Imagine the customer experience that brings. Like just calling your customers and seeing how they're doing,
right,
right? Actually calling them after they place an order and say, how was everything? That's the real customer experience. And
right,
that's all gone now because we're so busy doing the day to day things. So maybe we reduce the load of the customer care teams by 30%, and that extra 30% of their time can be calling 5 customers a day just to see how they are. Depending on the business you're in, if you're in the B2B business or manufacturing business, calling your customer you've had for 30 years just to see how they are once a quarter or once a month will go a long way. The relationship building, the human connection, talking to the person on the other side of the email, right? Like how many of our customers for the customer care team do they know that they've emailed probably 500 times and they've never spoke to? So I think, and then you drive customer loyalty through that. So you can measure customer loyalty, which in turn would drive more revenue, right? It's actually exciting to think about that. And, for the revenue side, I guess if we talk about how can we use AI to enable the sales teams to be more productive or, generate quotes faster, depending on the business you're in. There's some use cases there.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's this growing understanding that voice of the customer data is a gold mine. And voice of the customer data could take a lot of different forms, right? I mean, that could be, literally talking to customers and hearing their voices on the phone. That could be, of course, the tickets coming in. That could be the chat logs or, the search keywords. There's a whole bunch of sources. Um, but all that stuff is a signal, and it's a signal for business to evolve, to improve, to serve the customer better, to retain them, and make this impact on revenue. How do you think about VOC and the opportunity there?
Probably from the talks I've had about AI, maybe it's the what's not focused on the most, and I guess maybe because we're focusing on like how do I sell it to you, like how do we start capturing that VOC? Uh, I would say in a better way. Because again, that was just a survey. We all just get survey, fill out the survey, please. And we look at our percent. We have a 12% response rate. And how do we drive better response rates? And we sent the surveys at 4 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. And if we sent it on a Tuesday versus Thursday, you sent it on the day after a holiday, everybody was on vacation. So yeah, maybe, channeling the VOC through other means now because the teams are freed up is actually very exciting to think about, right? Like, again, just calling your customer, you know,
Hmm.
uh, hey, we see your shipment was delivered today. Did everything go as expected? How can we improve? How was your experience? Imagine having a conversation with somebody about that. They would appreciate that so much.
Right.
Just checking in on them. I think it's very exciting. It's a whole new way to start utilizing the teams to actually start being back in customer care, right? Instead of like looking behind a chat window and getting a tracking number.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it can be proactive too, right? I think if you're really savvy, you know that, at a certain point in your customer journey, people often need help, so you reach out to them right before that happens, for example.
Or even for the technical support time side of the business or the field service side of the business, it's the same way, right? Like all the knowledge bases and technical documents now can be accessed by AI, and customers can go in there and say, hey, I'm having this technical document, and it'll refer you to a page. And imagine following up with that customer, hey, we see you pulled the document off the website, and did you find everything you needed to? Did you still have issues? That proactive customer support will drive a lot of business. That's, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and it's quantifiable too. I think that's part of this conversation here that I just I can't help myself from repeating. Is like for the longest time, people just took it felt like they're taking shots in the dark and hoping that they're doing the right thing by being, a good person and working hard. But you can really quantify, yeah, we followed up with this person, we had a conversation with this person, and then they, renewed their contract, right? Or they bought a new product or whatever it is, right? So, the the position of support, I think in your case, you're calling it customer care, but it's moving more in this direction of consultation almost. It's more like a scaled customer success function, I think is the direction that things are
You
going.
could look at it like that. Yeah, sure. Like what the customer success teams do, right? And that's really what they own, calling the customer, checking in on the customer, being the liaison between the sales and service side of the business, right? Yeah, you're right. It's a modified customer success role, but the more touch points that we have with our customers, the more meaningful touch points we have with our customer. And a phone call is meaningful. It's pretty exciting.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's unexpected too, right? I think we all just become used to things that happen regularly. We have expectations when it comes to customer support and interactions with various businesses. And, especially if it's a larger business or in a certain industry, you would never expect to get a phone call, for example, right? Just how are you doing phone call. And so the opportunity to sort of go against expectations in a good way, I think is maybe something for people listening to consider. This has been a really interesting conversation. I wanted to get one thought from you before we go here. What is one piece of advice that you would give to your former self when you were starting out? That would maybe be helpful to people out there looking to advance and up their skills.
I think it's very easy. I learned this late in my career. Don't expect anybody to read your mind. And I mean by that, like if you want a promotion or if you have ambitions or if you want to grow, if you have ambitions to be a leader, you need to make that well known. I remember when I was passed up, I shouldn't say I was passed up because I didn't even apply for the position, but I was like a really good technician, right? Always one of the best, the hardworking, got everything done. And there was a new position that was made to a supervisor. And I remember like they announced, oh, we had a new supervisor and this person. In my head, I'm like, why didn't I get that? So I actually asked, I said, why wasn't I considered for the position? And they said, we didn't know you were interested.
Mm,
So, and even after that, it still took me 5+ years to like realize it. Right. The other way to do this is find a problem in the business and solve the problem. Right. You'll read these books and say like dress for the position you want, work like your manager works. Okay, sure, maybe, but what problems do you see in the business and solve that problem? And this is how I got my first promotion. Actually, I saw a problem in need in the business, I made a PowerPoint and I pitched it. I said, hey, this is what I think we're lacking, and this is how we can improve as a business. And they agreed with me. So I think that's it. You need to make well aware that you have ambitions, and then don't be afraid to leave. Don't be afraid to leave.
Mm. Initiative with volume, and also don't forget the exit door.
Yeah. No, I mean, the grass is not always greener, but if you're ambitious and you want to grow, sometimes the opportunity is just not available within your company.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just not available. Like they could think you're the best, they want to have growth for you, but there's just no positions. And if that's the case, and you can even get and if you work for an incredible organization, they will see that and they can even help you. Like if I had somebody in my org come to me and say, "Listen, Justin, I want a promotion or I'm looking for more," and I couldn't help them or I couldn't find them something, I would happily help them. As a leader, the most important thing you should take the most pride in is watching the people you care for advance and grow. That's what you
Absolutely.
should be. So if you have a junior leader or supervisor or manager and they leave because they got promoted, you should celebrate that. That's a coup to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to see your talent go. It's hard to see, the knowledge and experience walk out the door sometimes, but ultimately, like if that's where they're destined, that's where they're going. And you should be happy about that and feel good that you're able to, help them on their way. This has been a great conversation. Justin McDonnell, everybody, he's on LinkedIn if you want to reach out to him and ask him questions. And that's all for this episode of the CX Files podcast. We will see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.